Hi, and welcome to the ASI webinar, Insider Tips for Using AI to Streamline Your Promo Business. I'm Teresa Hegel, Executive Editor for ASI Media, and I'm so happy to introduce our three guests today. We have John Norris, Chief Strategy Officer at Counselor Top 40 Supplier Hit Promotional Products, Kate Alaves, President of Counselor Top 40 Distributor Promo Shop, and Lynn Kingsley, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Services at Ironmark USA. And before we get started with the webinar, I just want to encourage all the listeners to, type out your questions as you have them, anytime throughout the presentation, and we will address them as we are able to. So without further ado, let's get started on this exciting webinar. First off, I just wanted to have everybody kind of give me a little bit of background on your relationship with artificial intelligence, and a brief overview of how you guys are using it within your own companies. John, could you start us off?
Yeah, I am John Norris, Chief Strategy Officer at HIT, longtime tech enthusiast. I guess you could call myself that. How are we using it? HIT. I think, we were dabbling for the last 2 years. I think we've gotten serious about it in the last year. A lot of it being around graphics, artwork processing, trying to do different logo detections, anomaly detections, right? I think one of the places we're seeing real applications for it in real life in our manufacturing centers is being able to scan a logo and to tell is this logo X% similar to the base logo of what it should be. So that anomaly detection, defect detection. So image processing is where I think we're seeing some early adoption, early wins in our workflow. Obviously, there's the chat bots, right? I mean, hitpromo.net has a chat bot powered by AI. There's the kind of easy check the box places, but I think that the biggest wins for us are going to be obviously process automation and then anything that revolves around graphics processing, which is helpful since that's the core of a lot of what our business does.
Right. Kate, what about you?
Yeah, so for us, we are looking at kind of office services, right? So how do we bake in the automation functions and AI into the way people work, whether that's inside their Office 365 environment, and point to tools that are already a part of that system to help people, draft better emails, work faster, smarter, have those spell check options in there. There are a lot of text pieces in there. But then on the back end, in terms of what we're doing from a company standpoint, we utilize AI to manage some of our data governance pieces to identify patterns or anomalies in some of the things that we see that might be problematic from a negative traffic standpoint. If someone's trying to come, get into our system, how do we identify some of those things through an AI functionality that would give us a heads up where maybe we couldn't have human eyes on it at all times?
Gotcha. And Lynn, how are you guys using AI?
Hi, thank you. Yes, Lynn Kingsley. I work at Ironmark, which is a 200 employee company. We do digital marketing as well as print and promotional products. So we do a lot of content creation with generative AI tools. We also, but we have very standardized processes across the content teams to ensure responsible and ethical use. So what stages, we have outlined policies of like what stages of the research process and content creation process are leveraging AI tools. We also offer predictive analytics as a service. So we've been doing that for some time. We acquired a company that does predictive analytics. So different type of AI, but AI nonetheless. We develop websites as well. So looking at use cases within programming. But really, it's really important with such a large company that we develop guidelines and standardized processes for leveraging the tools, because it could get really out of hand very quickly, and the company needs to be responsible for its employees' use of AI and ensuring we're doing work better, faster, and in more abundance, but responsibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But first off, I wanted to just kind of like level set with what what does it actually mean when we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence? I know a lot of times it's like the large language models like ChatGPT, but obviously there's other tools. So kind of like, what do we mean by AI? Where does it excel? Where is it lacking? Can we have kind of like a little overview on that?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this one. I think everybody thinks, AI. They get those original pictures back to the Terminator, right? It was like our first like robots are going to take over the world and I guess make us all at their mercy. But I do think there is you're seeing a large or a initial investment of robotics within the industry, especially on the supplier and manufacturer side. Obviously, there's a element of artificial intelligence in there, kind of image processing, kind of how it goes about its functionality and the mass compute power. But I think you go back to its core, it is the LLMs, right? It's these neural networks working off of these large data sets, which I know Kate will talk to here in a second of where all that data comes from. But I just think we've finally gotten to the point where we have the compute power to put together all of these pieces of information and then essentially simulate what the brain's doing with a neural network and connect the dots. And I guess there was a founder of AI or of the OpenAI says that within 1,000 days there's a possibility of AI becoming smarter than humans. So we have that to look forward to.
Yay.
No, no, buzzkill. Sorry.
So, but I mean, there's, from what I understand, and I know it's getting better all the time, but a lot of where AI is strongest is at those kind of repetitive tasks that a lot of humans don't really want to be doing anyway. But where is it? Where is it lacking? Where is it? What are the strong points?
So I'm not as techie as my colleagues here from a deep technical side, but what I can tell you from a business standpoint is when we're looking across an organization, the things that AI is exceptionally good at are, managing efficiencies, right? Getting things that are maybe a heavier lift or kind of sucking joy out of someone's day, right? It takes a really long time to think about how to be super creative in a response or super succinct in an email, especially when you hit 3, 4, 5 o'clock and you've been doing it, all day long. So those are really, really exceptional cases of how we take some text that we've already utilized or look at a project deck and say, okay, how can I make this a little more user friendly? So those are happy examples. On the not so great side is really some of, you have the stuff that we've talked about in the past about, some of the images that you generate from AI are not super robust. They're maybe not reflective of the exact brand standards that we want to hand. Yep, the hands freak me out, right? The hands really freak me out. I think so. There are some things there in images, but there are also areas where the text itself is not reflective of exactly what we want it to be as a relationship builder, right? Certainly in an industry where we are building relationships that are partner driven and they're focused on the idiosyncrasies of all of our partners, we want to be cognizant of how to connect in those ways. And so we can use AI to craft a better email, but then we really need to put that human touch there, right? We need to read through and make sure that it is, content that is textually correct, but that it sounds authentic and it doesn't feel so robotic that our end user isn't connecting authentically there. And same in our images and our deck presentations and whatever we send out, right? So it is a work tool, but certainly, needs a little bit of human touch.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're getting a message, an email or anything that's from just a robot. You do want that human connection. I know, and Lynn, I know that you have some very specific use cases you can share of how you guys are using AI and specifically how it's saving you guys time and money. So could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, sure. I've founded IRMark's AI Council, which is a group of 17 enthusiasts cross-departmentally across the company that have raised their hand in being kind of an AI champion for their department. So in order to get board approval on this, we had a couple of pilot use cases. And going back to what Kate said on like identifying what is a good task for AI to do or human-led AI and what are tasks that we keep remaining human. So certainly relationship building and all of those things like human. But tasks that are repetitive, tasks that could save time and money, tasks that humans don't like to do, are great ones to test out. So we had a couple of experiments where we identified first 5 individuals to track time that it took them to do a certain task as just a human, and then how long that would take to do as with AI, so human-led AI. And so some of the tasks were creating blog posts, which is, again, leveraging AI in coordination with humans and when it is responsible to do. So I like to say that because it's great for content creation. But like you say, in the beginning of the process and in the middle of the process and at the end of the process, that human intervention is absolutely necessary for quality. Meta tags for blog posts. We looked at headers for mockups, creating social calendars, meeting summary and proposal writing. So meeting summaries have been a huge time savings. There are several tools that you could purchase, and I can go into this later, but the real key to identifying whether you can put information in that is sensitive, if you're paying for a tool and you have documentation on the security, that's great. If it's free, you have to assume that the data that you put in is being leveraged to train more models and is not secure. So that's like my go-to. If you're paying for it, you might be okay. You have to read the documentation. If you're not paying for it, chances are you're not okay. So we, ensure when we're doing meeting summaries, there's some great tools, and we've tested a few that actually transcribe meetings and are able to right there in the tool develop summaries, action items. You can ask it questions. Did we discuss budget in this meeting? And that has saved so much time for our account managers. We looked at modifying code and web tools, Excel formulas and data analysis, and then other technical communication. So this is what I want to say, create verbiage that for a highly skilled technical person, middle skilled technical person. So these large language models are excellent at versioning. So we do a lot of that. And in total, in the experiment, we saved an efficiency of 94 hours in just those tasks that I leverage. So you times that by a monthly number, you times that by your cost for salary, and you can have a pretty compelling case for executive leadership or even board approval.
Awesome. Lynn, you bring up a great point about being able to utilize data from some of these services you're utilizing. So what we saw in our last 2 SaaS contracts that we went to sign is buried way down on page 98 was us authorizing these very large vendors to be able to anonymously train their chatbots and their LLMs using our anonymized data. So you can obviously, I would caution anybody who's looking at some of these contracts, every company is starting to bake those in way down the end of the chain. So obviously strike those things out of those contracts because you do not want to be training random LLMs with your company's personal data. So just something to be able to look at that we run across twice in the last month.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so really you have to read those, read the fine print.
Or put it into a language model and then ask it questions.
Absolutely. I mean, right, we also need to make sure. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
We also need to make sure they are in alignment with our data processing agreements or our data privacy agreements, right? So, I mean, I think that's where we kind of find the balance between what John and Lynn are saying. Like, we need to look at our contracts that we're signing with future vendors and suppliers, and when we're moving our data into those spaces, and make sure that we are transparently connecting back with our own clients as we look at our data privacy addendums, at our agreements, at our contractual obligations, to make sure that everybody is operating in a really transparent landscape when we talk about the data that we are utilizing and how and where we're using AI models.
Okay. I actually do have our first question from the audience, and it's related to AI artwork. So the question is there a specific program that we can use to help generate artwork? We're looking to start with a known landmark and create something new. As an example, if I ask an AI to create the Statue of Liberty at dawn, most times we barely recognize the statue.
I mean, I would turn to look at the Adobe suite, right? Adobe is very much into generative AI. I think it's what Fireflies is their AI tool where, there a lot of what the graphics processing is really good at today is, removing backgrounds, applying new backgrounds, applying functionality. On the generative side, I think from a product development, it struggles, right? If you're saying, hey, give me a stainless steel tumbler in front of this, on the beach, it's going to grab you some random tumbler from the internet. So if you start with a base image and say, hey, remove this image, put it on the beach, I think that's a better, experience. Obviously, there's the, Dolly is going to be your largest, most popular generative tool that's out there, Dolly 3 or whatever they're up to at this point. But Adobe was early into the AI game, and if you're already using the Creative Suite, which probably 90% of the industry is, just leverage the tools that are already built into Adobe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if there's issues if you're trying to get a very specific thing like the Statue of Liberty and then making it building that from scratch. I don't know if that's going to be kind of like a copyright issue because they're probably taking that from somebody else's image. Whereas if you have an image and can use it to take the background off and put it in a new spot, that might have fewer kind of ethical issues behind it.
Well, you also bring up something that I think we're talking about when we, what confirmations are we giving to our AI models, right? So what are our prompts? And this is where John and Lynn are probably doing some really, really advanced work. For us, we have a series of prompts that we feel are more robust. And how do we talk to our teams about utilizing those appropriate prompts to get that process started? So you don't get lost in kind of like this deep dive in AI, just going back and forth with your co-pilot or whatever it might be. You can get some really thoughtful prompts that help you generate the right responses or better responses from whatever you're using as a tool.
So Lynn, speaking of prompts, like what do you have any kind of like tips for people for when they get started using these large language models? What should they be doing to kind of hone the prompts that they're doing?
Well, there are several frameworks out there that we use. We have, like Kate mentioned, at IRMark, we're developing a prompt library, and I think that's really important to do. In terms of framework, we start by giving a large language model a role. You are an expert in B2B marketing with expertise in content development, editing. You have a degree from Harvard, and you give it like expertise. So it has some framework to be able to pull from. Because remember, a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini is drawing from like billions and billions of data sets. And if you can focus it a little bit by giving it a frame of reference, your likelihood for accurate outputs goes so much higher. So you give it a role and you state the task. And then you need to give it some background. It needs to be able to, like search engines, it needs to be able to wrap its crawlers around some language. Because remember, these large language models are just really a prediction tool of what is going to be the next word. So you have to give it some context as much as you can. And that's where this data security comes into play, because if you're dumping secure data as your background, that becomes a problem. So there are ways of anonymizing data if you need to, if you don't have the budget to use paid tools that are locked down. But you give background and then you restate the original task and give it some more specifics. Because remember, the attention spans are not that long for a lot of these tools. So you need to restate the original task and give it some parameters, give it some tone, some structure, some framework for how you want the output to look. And sometimes what I do is I'll also ask it questions. Do you have enough information to get started? Or what other questions do you need in order to make this a really robust response? One other little tip, it sounds really weird, but if you give it some, not threaten, but if you give it some stakes the output tends to be a lot better.
Like
There's some,
what is a stake you could give it?
yeah, if you, there's some really funny examples that you could say, if you don't get this right, my boss is going to fire me. Or really, I mean, there's a lot of data to show that the outputs get so much better. Um, so you could say, this is very important. Take a deep breath. Let me know what other information you need if it's like a really long prompt. And there are certain tools that are better at long prompts than others. So knowing also kind of which tools are better for what can sometimes be helpful. But prompt libraries I cannot stress that enough. And I don't know if we'll get into GEMs or custom GPTs, but rather than starting from scratch every time, there's opportunities to create custom GPTs that are already trained in a specific, that you can pre-train, or Jim and I call them GEMs.
Also, be polite, right? We were training these things. So in 1,000 days, when these things become smarter than you want them to remember that you always said please and thank you. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it is. I know that we've seen that, like when they would take some of those large language models and like unleash them on like Twitter or something like that, and it would, I don't know, veer towards hate speech within like 20 minutes. We don't want to like feed into that. We want to be nice people and be polite, say please and thank you.
But I think that's a common misunderstanding, right? Like we need to utilize our tools in our framework to help generate kind of the content that we want to see, right? So I think sometimes people believe that they're working in AI in this like vacuum, right? This is a space where we reflect back the kind of process outputs that we want. And so that being polite, not only are we participating in something that we want to see in our workspace, but we are collaborating with our tools in a way that is reflective of our character and values. And it sounds a little wild to talk about technology in that way, but certainly when we're getting into a model that has a lot of language outputs in it, what we put in is really, really high impact, right? So I think it's an interesting shift in how we think about collaborating with our tools when it becomes so personal.
It's going back to data and securing data. I actually have a question here from Nicole. She wants to know, how do you secure your own AI data from being used elsewhere? And I think we've talked about it a little bit, but are there some specific tips you guys can give for, keeping your data secure?
Don't upload it. Don't upload a massive file of all your contacts to ChatGPT. Like even these I'm a paying member for ChatGPT. I know that everything I upload is being used to retrain these. So the act of paying does not exclude you. Read the kind of terms and conditions of these tools, but you're going to have to anonymize anything that you do and just assume that now if you can go out and invest in a private cloud or a private GPT that is, your company can run and then has a hardware infrastructure, but there is 1% of the population is going to be able to do that and have your own private cloud to do that. Just, the benefit of these is that they're universal. They're indexing the world's information, aka the internet. So you have to go into this knowing that whatever you use probably has the risk of being used to train these models. So anonymize your data. Don't ever use personal data. Like, the state of California will roast you for uploading a million records of personal contact information because you're trying to do some silly map for your kid's school project, right? There's the realities of these things, and you just have to assume that's always going to be used, and how do you anonymize it to not have it be used in the models.
Yeah, for me, this is where our industry has a real opportunity to provide some guideposts, right? So one of the things from a business standpoint that I see in terms of use case is that people attend something online or an event or a conference, and they're super excited about using all these new AI tools, and they go back to their desk and throw all their stuff into these tools that they found on the internet. And my fear there is that we're not really providing people with kind of the, not only the pluses, but also kind of those parameters or guidelines. So for us, we work really, really closely with a think tank, kind of like Lynn's company. We have a group of people who are talking about use case, what's important, what are we afraid of, what are we nervous about, but we coordinate really, really closely with our IT department. We look at risk. We talk to our CFO, right? So we have a whole leadership team designed to evaluate what kinds of things we want to go in and out of our AI models. And we start with the things that are most high impact with the least amount of personal data or least amount of risk, right? And so those tend to be big lifts on what we've talked about earlier, some of the text pieces, but also we know we can identify patterns, right? And so pattern identification is important. We work with a student population that helps us identify consumer values from content that was already created on the internet to look at different areas and market segments where we can better target customers and do that with products that are thoughtful and meet current consumer values as they shift. So those are really helpful opportunities for us, but absolutely build in an opportunity for you to talk to your teams. We only use our AI that is pre-approved by our IT director and our risk team.
At the same time, we have to realize we're in the middle of a global arms race around how to use this technology. So there's realities of, hey, everybody's trying to steal your data and train their models off of your data. But if we overly regulate this field and don't allow our employees and companies the flexibility to take advantage of this awesome technology, you're going to get left behind. So it's a fine balance between doing the things that protect your company and protect your legal obligations and not strapping down people's abilities to be creative with these tools.
Right. That makes, definitely. So I know we've kind of thrown around some of the, more popular tools like ChatGPT and like Copilot, Gemini, things like that. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit more about some of the most popular AI tools out there, what some of the benefits might be. And I also have a question from the audience. And this person says that they're like totally brand new to AI and they want to know where they can kind of find the most basic instruction on how to start using it. So let's kind of talk about some of these specific, models out there and maybe just some point them in a direction where they can go to like learn more about stuff. Lynn, do you have a?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, unless Kate, you want to start?
No, go for it.
I mean we call it the mothership. ChatGPT is sort of the generalized. They were first to the consumer market. It's a great place to start. It's running on GPT 4.0. It's multimodal, so there, the app on your phone, you can actually talk to it. It knows how to read, see, speak, hear. So that's a great place. I would say that's a great place to start. It's kind of the generalized it's a great place to start. Within ChatGPT, of course, you can create with a paid account, you can create these custom GPTs, which you can pre-train. So if something you go back to time and time again, like an example use case that we've done, we have quite a robust MIS system that has like a 1,000-page user manual, and we created a GPT for users that want to be able to know how to use, if they have issues using this system, and it's been a huge time saver for people. So that's an example of a GPT. Google Gemini also has a great tool. It has much longer memory life, I guess is a way to explain it. It can analyze up to 700,000 words or hours and hours of video and audio. So it has a much longer attention span. But remember, it's Google and it's free. So anything you put in there is, I just have to keep saying that. And just going back, John, I just want to make sure you by me saying that, I wasn't necessarily saying if you pay for it, you're good. It's like, if you pay for it, you got to read about it. If it's free, you're definitely not good, is what I was trying to say, as it pertains to data security. So I'm full agreement with you. And then Gemini, we talked about, has gems. Claude is another large language model running on 3.5 Sonnet. I think of Claude as much more human. You can train it to write like your best performing content writer. There's a nice and sweet aspect to it. I think of Claude as more like a friend, in tone. I don't know if you guys have any other kind of differentiating factors in Claude, but they also have a pretty cool tool inside of Claude called Artifacts, where you can create and iterate on pretty complex documents and code and apps like right within Claude, and it'll enable you to be able to take code right out of it.
Is that one paid?
It's
model?
free and paid.
Okay.
So there's a paid model, but there's also a free model.
Okay.
And Meta's Llama is actually an open model, which means that you can run it. It's called an open model, but you can actually run it on your locally, which locks it down. So if you really do want lockdown and you have any sort of technical skills, you could actually run Llama from a local instance, and that's completely locked down. It's I always remember it's kind of the opposite of what you think. Llama's a open model, so it kind of means it's closed down. ChatGPT is a closed model, but it's all you can't take it and put it onto your machine. So that's just a few, and I'm a big fan of Perplexity. It's kind of it was the original like search and large language model together. So it's pretty fast. So there's, again, different models have different and different tools have different cons.
It's interesting that you bring up Perplexity because I think that's the new frontier of AI is AI search, right? And Perplexity was the first one in there. You saw in the last few weeks GPT search being launched. I think the interesting play there is how Google will respond to that. Will they put themselves out of business with ad revenues by winning the AI search game, but then diminishing the pay-per-clicks? So that's something that has to be figured out. In that same train of thought, we did a Promo Standards hackathon where in the past year, where all the teams had to create an AI application for the promotional products industry, and the majority of them went after the search market. Right, I think there is a frontier where I think you're seeing the ASIs of the world who have the ESP searches are trying to utilize and find real applications for how to use some of these GPTs in their search algorithms. And it comes down to, at the end of the day, it's like, how much do you trust the results, right? I think it's, if you know that the number one t-shirt in the industry is X and it returns Y, then probably it's not the best model. But I think you're seeing the industry's first stab at it globally was to try to solve the search game. It seemed like every software provider in the industry immediately after trade show went out and launched, this is my new AI-powered search. So, I think search is the kind of new frontier and of kind of where there's low-hanging fruit, and it'll be interesting to see how that modernizes as the technology becomes powerful.
Just really quickly, Teresa, to circle back around to your chat question. For those of us who aren't as techie as John and Lynn, right, because these two are like serious experts, if you're looking to dig in for our audience and you just don't really know where to start, you can start on a personal level, right? So you can look at your opportunities on your home computer. Almost all of our platforms that we're really comfortable using today, right, whether that's PowerPoint or Canva or Adobe, have an AI button in there, and you can really get started by just getting comfortable. So I try to ask our teams to think about when we're introducing new technology or something that feels really difficult to kind of wrap our hearts and minds around, the shift from paper to computers, the shift from desk phones to VoIP, right? So cell phones, even that kind of adoption is going to take a little bit of muscle memory to generate. I do find that practice helps. For most of us, if you go into your Microsoft Office, there's a feature called Designer, right? If you're looking at your beyond the chat GPT functions, you can really look at how to improve your presentation decks through Canva. And there's an AI model there that helps you kind of play around with it, get a little more comfortable. But I personally believe from a change management standpoint, it helps people feel good to try to carve out some innovation time where they're utilizing a tool in a space that's a little more comfortable, even if it's a little sillier, right? And so building the time into the day, making it a company priority for people to try maybe 3 points. If you're not the most technical, like my buddies here who are super experts, I feel much better if I'm trying out tools to see what the results are so that I know it's not as terrifying when I go to use it in a business case. And I understand a little bit more about what's happening and how it can benefit our workforce if I'm looking at it in kind of a day-to-day aspect.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great tip, because part of it is just kind of playing around with these tools and seeing what they can do. And I wonder, and kind of going back to something one of you guys said, was like, maybe you can actually even just ask ChatGPT for tips on how to use it better. Ask it like where it can find resources that will help you give prompts. You know what I mean? Like, why not just turn it around? It's going to be searching anyway. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach the learning around AI. And we have a bunch more questions. I'm going to ask a couple more of these before I go back to our regularly scheduled questions. We have a question from Carl. How can AI automate order processing, and which AI programs do you recommend to do this?
Oh, okay. This is great. It's a great question. So long, I guess, journey of the industry has been to seamlessly integrate order processing, right? And you saw the early days of the industry chasing it, trying to ram our POs through a automotive standard, and massive failure. And then, many attempts of various private APIs that certain suppliers, distributors were adopting. Then promo standards comes along, takes a large stab at it, and gets the industry to where it's at today, which is a set of standards for how we communicate purchase orders across the industry. That's where it's at today. Where it's going and where the future of it is using artificial intelligence to dissect purchase orders, right? Is no longer, I think we are fastly approaching in the next 12 to 18 months a world where purchase orders will be clearly discernible by a ChatGPT. Right now, where I can upload a purchase order and dissect it and then insert those bits of information into my order and then make decisions. So if I say, hey, this purchase order came from North Carolina, ships from our Florida facility, needs to be in California by December 23rd, what method do I need to ship and when? Those are decisions it can make. Now, what tools natively do that? I'm sure there's some random tool out there because there's thousands of AI tools. That's where the innovation and the custom programming of, using an open AI, using the open source framework that they have where you can tap into the ChatGPT background to make this happen. That's the future of our industry. I think if we're sitting here in 2 years and we're still manually entering in purchase orders, I think we've all missed the boat. That's the future of this. So it's, I think there's people playing in this arena, and I think you'll see some of the innovators of the industry in the next 6 months really make strides here.
Yeah. But right now, there's not one tool that you can just go to and have this done, but it's being worked on.
Right.
I would say the democratization of like programming that we all saw in November of 22 when ChatGPT came out. We feel like we can make all of these things happen, every single use case. But the truth is, like to John's point, there will be tools out there. If any technology provider that you're using is not currently researching and doing a ton of R&D and building in AI tools to make their software easier, they're not going to be around. So it's right now we're all thinking we can make it all and connect it all and do everything we should, and we should try and we should experiment. But the software companies that you're probably currently using to do these tasks, they better come out with something because their competitors will.
Right. And as far as I know, we were talking about using AI tools to write, maybe emails to prospects. Sandy has a question, just what AI tools would you use for writing to prospects? I guess that would be like, what would be good for like generating different emails and reaching out to sales prospects?
For me, we use what is inside our system, right? So we utilize Copilot. My kind of preferred method is you really, really do not want to appear when you're prospecting or when you're talking to anyone with a relationship build, like you popped that into ChatGPT and came out with like a very clear prompt, right? So I usually recommend write kind of a basic script, right? Like jump into your email draft, write a quick outline, ask your IT department what they prefer in terms of parameters. I know we want to be creative, but for me, I'm always a data governance maniac. So, figure out where they want you to put some of those text pieces and then throw it into for us, it's Copilot, right? And ask a couple prompts around it. Can you help me make this more succinct? Can you help me make this friendlier? Can you help me make this targeted to someone who wants to buy, promotional products or who's looking for this kind of solution or whose company has these values? And then work with your chat model to kind of identify, is that the right tone, right? You still have to review it. You still have to refine it so that it sounds like you. The one caveat I'll give you is when we're working with our student populations at the undergraduate and graduate level, we work in marketing analytics classrooms with relative frequency and in high school classrooms as well. Our students know if it is AI generated, right? They can sense it right away. And so you do not want to appear disingenuous, right? You do not want to forget that, for some of us, the first time it pops out of ChatGPT, you're like, this is so amazing. Our students recognize the model that it looks like. And so we want to be thoughtful about the final approach.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember, like, you don't have to use what it gives you right away, right? Like you can iterate to get something better and you can use parts of it that resonate but you really still want to have your own voice in there.
Absolutely.
You don't want to lose the human part of things. Let's see, I have another. So a question from Greg. Without having to register a design with the U.S. Patent Office, are there any other ways to make sure an AI-generated design is not violating any copyright infringement?
Ask AI if it's violating a copyright infringement. That's what I would do. Like, does this violate any copyright infringements out there?
And have you tried? Does that work? Will that work?
Probably. Everything works with AI.
I think sometimes you have to be pretty careful with some of the new artwork that you generate. You do have to really think about, is this like kind of where is it coming from? I thought like Adobe at one point was saying that their AI they had worked through to make sure that there was no copyright infringement.
Most models today won't let you. They're very cognizant of copyright infringement, right? If I say, hey, create this logo that's very similar to Coca-Cola, it's going to stop me immediately, right? It's not going to allow you to use certain artists or certain likenesses, right? If I go and try to create a Taylor Swift video, it's going to stop me immediately, right? So there's some native built-in functionalities, but if you are using like a rogue stable diffusion instance, you might run into that. So on the flip side, a piece of art, AI generated art, just sold for $100 million last week. So maybe what you're doing isn't horrible, but yes, there is a real concern of copyright infringement. I would say, if it feels like it's copyright infringement, probably is, right? It's always give it the smell test. If it's, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not the right thing. But first thing I would do is pump that right back into ChatGPT and be like, are there any trademark violations that you anticipate coming out of this logo? And it'll be pretty honest with you of finding the answers.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily for art, but sometimes when I'm using ChatGPT or one of these models and getting it to generate some different information, I'm like, well, where did that come from? What were your sources? Where did you come up with this information? Like, it's okay to just kind of like keep the conversation going and kind of understand where it's getting that information, how it's generating it, because you don't want to just like copy things that are from like it may be something that was on the internet. It doesn't mean it's true, right? They could be using a source that is not totally reliable. So you have to kind of you still have to be very skeptical, I think, about what responses you're getting. it's very fast and it can be very accurate, but it can also be kind of totally out of left field. So you have to keep your, thinking caps on when you're doing this.
I would say if there's any question or it's high stakes, definitely consult like a legal expert. Because if you're using high visibility, you should really, you don't have to go to I don't know, I think you use the U.S. Patent Office, but if you have a legal consultant, I would definitely get advice.
Yeah, run it by the lawyers. And not a ChatGPT lawyer, a real one. Here's a question from Jeff. How are you utilizing AI for maximizing supply chain efficiencies and reducing costs? Also, for inventory management with AI integrated into inventory systems, meaning optimizing and project reorder points.
Right. This is where I guess, we work with some proprietary tools here for supply chain forecasting. So I would, they exist out there. I would say, though, what you shouldn't do is upload a giant Excel file of all of your order activity for the last 90 days and have it generate a forecast. Back to the data privacy aspects of it. But I do think that the predictive analytics is another piece of where we see this going. I know we had a intern here who was working with some of the Facebook predictive analytic tools that were out there to try to apply that to customer forecast and how well it could do. And at the end of the day, we found that it was essentially just doing a straight line graph and forcing the data to that graph. So I think it goes back to always analyze the results you get from these things, whether it's accounting, mathematics, whatever, forecasting. Always look at the results. Make sure that they seem like they're in the right ballpark, and then dive into them from there. But don't just trust everything you get from these tools.
Yeah.
I can't speak. Sorry, I was going to say I can't speak to supply chain, but in terms of reducing costs, we build predictive models using first and third party data. So like third party data feeds from like any kind of provider to layer on top of our first party data to identify either more people that are likely to do something. So if it's likely to churn, we send messaging to those people who are likely to attrite. And when you send marketing messages to the right people and not different messages to different people that are likely to use a certain behavior, the ROI goes up and your costs tend to go down because there's not as much wastage.
Okay, interesting. Now I know we've kind of touched on this a lot already about data security and having these guardrails, but do you guys have anything more you can kind of discuss about crafting these internal policies to ensure that you're not, kind of dinging your brand or, letting your kind of data go wherever it may?
Harvard Business Review. Oh, sorry. I just want to say a quick stats. Documented 77% of knowledge workers are using AI in secret. So the more you can get these policies out and have some way of enforcing them by providing tools, which will start with an upfront investment. That's why we've been building all of these kind of tables showing the savings later on, because it will require an upfront investment in cost and time. So building out your policies and then providing lockdown tools is the best kind of advice I could give you, because people are using it.
Right. Kate, what were you going to say?
We do the same thing. So we know that people are anxious to use it. So give them 3 ways they can use it inside your system that have been vetted, right? And present them as kind of like, get started here. Here are our data governance policies. Here are the pitfalls and dangers that we foresee. So just giving everybody kind of a really transparent view into, we want to embrace this, we want to use this, we want to be thoughtful and use critical thinking and real discernment around these things. But I think bringing it, as Lynn said, to the forefront through transparency, we know you're excited to use these tools and they can be very helpful. Here are 3 things you can do today to reduce friction in these areas, right? Like you have problems with A, B, and C in your workflow. Here's how to improve those through AI functionality. We've already pre-vetted them. Here's where to find them. Here's how to use them. Here are the tools. And let us know how it goes so we can help support you as we move forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, Now, I think, even though like lots of people are using these tools, there is still a lot of fear and kind of mistrust of this technology among the general public, and maybe even like within your own companies. How do you address kind of the unease some people still have with this tech?
All right, I'll take a stab at this one. Look, I think everybody thinks that it's going to replace their job. Like, there's the realities of it. The low hanging fruits of all corporations are probably under high scrutiny with to be replaced by AI. But where in our industry do we? I think we see the first impacts of it. Data processing, order entry, graphics services, and then that customer service aspect of it. That essentially, if it was a job that we were able to outsource to some third world country over the last 20 years, those are the tasks that we are coming for with artificial intelligence. They're the easy, low-hanging fruit, the repetitive things that we were able to offshore and remove from our business processes and have somebody else handle. That's, I guess, the first wave of what we're coming for. And the second is going to be that, the big arms race right now is around AI agents, right? It's training agents to pretty much do individuals' jobs. So a John Norris agent would, know how I interact with my emails and process them accordingly. And that very specific agentized view of individuals' jobs is where the new frontier of AI will be in the next, 12 to 18 months. But yeah, if you're afraid that your job being a very friendly salesperson to the promotional products industry, that's not going away anytime soon. What it is, if you have somebody who takes notes for you and for all of your meetings that you attend, like that's where Assembly, that's where Fireflies, that's where every AI tool from meeting note takers are going to come after. But the jobs that require humans to use their brains very constructively every single day, like you're good, right? That's not what AI is here for. It's the redundant task where we can then take that person who was doing that redundant task and utilize them in some other area of the business. So I think it should be viewed as a very positive thing for, I guess,
Yeah.
the workforce.
And I think something I had heard someone say once was, other than some of the kind of more menial types of tasks you were talking about, AI isn't going to be taking your job, but somebody who uses AI might take your job. So if you're not learning this stuff and kind of integrating it into your day to day, you may be losing some efficiency, and it may make you less attractive to a prospective employer.
Yeah, and why is the number one AI email client called Superhuman, right? It's because it helps you do those remedial email tasks and automatically reply, automatically follow up, right? It's that concept of AI making us all quote unquote superhumans to where we can be 40% more productive in our daily lives.
I mean, I think, when we're talking about that fear, though, there's a real emotional fear there. And so for some of our friends who are concerned about it, it would be very comparable to saying I don't use a computer because I'm in favor of fax machines, right? And so we have to think about all of these versions and all of these developments in our technology space are really complementary tones for all of us to do our best work. And I know for our team members, I want them to focus on the things that help them shine, right? What are the reasons that we hired them is to offer value and joy in their workday, to be, thoughtful and vulnerable and kind. And, if we can get rid of some of those robotic tasks, let's absolutely do it. But we're utilizing AI in a way that allows us to be our best selves without sounding too hallmarky, right? But that's where the joy of work actually begins, when we're connecting in a way that is above kind of the robotic processing. And if we can hand that off to some automated task functionality, great. Let's do that so we can do more of what we do best.
Right. I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but AI is moving fast, and we talked about some of like what's going to come next. But what do you guys think kind of overall the future holds for AI and the business world? John,
That's a big
or
question.
Lynn is.
It is a big question.
That's a big question. I kind of touched on it before. It's if it can take those remedial tasks off of our plates, it allows us to be more productive in the workforce. I think that creates a happier workforce, right? Or the tasks that nobody wants to do. Imagine if you have AI to do these things for you, and you can do the fun parts of your job. Like that's utopia for all of us, right? So I think we should all be hoping that that's what the outcome of this is. So there are the realities of cost savings and whatever comes along from it on the terms of job reductions, but there's a positive side of this, which is hopefully a better work-life balance for you know the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little bit of maybe a different take on it. I definitely think AI will take knowledge workers' jobs, not a whole job, but over time. There's no doubt. I don't know if we'll go to like in the future a 20-hour work week. I don't know, but we're not there yet, and there's a lot of opportunity to develop. And I think humans, as we are, will begin to value things that humans only can do. So I think in-person conferences are going to be more important. In-person engagements, like I think humans will value those more. And I think, like John said, I think this more strategic work that we like to do, want to do, and humans are better at, will have more time to do those things. And I think we're pretty far off. I think we're pretty far off from AGI, artificial general intelligence, meaning AI is more intelligent than humans. I think we need government regulation. I think that our lawmakers have not been involved as much as I would like, but I think we can all upskill ourselves and identify what are those skills that we need to interact with AI tools in a way that make our talents superhuman, like coming back to what you said.
So I think we have only about 3 minutes left, but maybe we can just go back around and have each of you kind of give your final thought about AI and how we can use it in promo. And we'll start with Kate.
Yeah, I would say dive in and use the things that are already baked into your regular workday, right? So if you are a little nervous about it, if you haven't tried it, jump in and use them for some of the text pieces, some of the heavier lifts that might not be your most favorite parts of the day. And don't let it intimidate you, right? It's already in your daily workflow. You probably don't recognize it then. Ask your IT department, ask your buddies, ask your colleagues, and start using those in small ways. So your muscle memory just gets really, really comfortable with how you can use them as a part of your regular workday so that it doesn't catch up to you later that you haven't given it a try.
Yeah. And I mean, things like spell check and autocorrect, those are forms of AI that we all are. Yeah, we're comfortable with those. We use them all the time. So
Grammarly.
Think of it like that. Those aren't scary. Those are things that we've integrated into our daily life without too many issues. This is just kind of another layer on top of that.
Yeah.
So Lynn, what are your final thoughts?
I would say be curious and fearless and dig in, like Kate said. Things like anonymized data normalization. I mean, like make all of these in dollar signs. There's so many dumb little things that we're spending a lot of time on. And think about it. If this is a tool that I could possibly put into a task that I could possibly put into AI, I would disagree with Kate.
Yeah. I think, and that's another good point. There are so many dumb little things we do. And why do we do them? Oh, because we've always done them that way. So like, this is a good opportunity to kind of review your business and look at those things like, I've always done it that way, but why? Do I need to? Is there another way to do it? And AI can maybe help you find new ways to do things. And let's wrap it up with John.
Yeah, I just think get yourself some simple wins, right? Like instead of using the free ChatGPT, pay $20 a month. It's so much better. I promise you, it's the best 20. If you're spending $8 on Netflix, spend $20 on ChatGPT. It's worth it. But take those. If you're an Excel guru, take those simple tasks, the things that you struggle with that are like annoying to do, and have ChatGPT, have AI do these tasks, and just see the outputs. As a background in engineering. Everybody, the whole thing is tinkering, right? It's like go in and experiment, try things out, see what doesn't work, and then you'll quickly develop like, hey, here's the 5 quick things that I really should be using this for that are just nuisance in my workday. Is it email automation? Is it email summarization? But just find some quick wins. You don't have to solve the world's graphics problems or the industry's order entry problems. You can just go out there and just, if you make your day 5% easier by using some of these tools that you happen to find out from watching a webinar at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like, good for you. But you just got to try it out. Don't expect somebody to hold your hand and force you into these things.
Yeah. This should be, in some ways, this can be a really fun time and a time for creativity and curiosity and just experimentation. So I think this was a really great conversation. I'm so glad that you guys all, joined us today to share your expertise, and I hope everybody in the audience got something out of it. Thank you so much. And for ASI, I'm Teresa Hagel, and I'll see you guys later.